Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. Konstantin here, and on the other side of the screen is...
Becky.
How are you, still floating?
Yeah, still floating.
All right, well, everyone commented about the curtains in the background.
I know, it's great, isn't it? Sailing somewhere near the equator, what can you do?
Exactly, it's a beautiful kind of shade of beige and green.
It's a shame they're not like a green screen, because then I could just superimpose that I'm on a tropical island or something.
Absolutely. Let's spend half an hour just discussing the material they use, because our viewership loves that.
I bet they do. But we actually have some actual news for you this week, so shall we get stuck in?
Nah, let's talk about the curtains. All right, Becky, you start first. What do we have?
Okay, so Nikon have released a firmware update for the D7100, which is quite surprising considering that the camera's been discontinued for a fair bit of time. What they essentially did is they fixed an issue that resulted in live view ending after about 10 minutes of being started when using Camera Control Pro 2, even when the no limit option was selected in the monitor off delay. The camera was actually originally released in 2013 in the UK, so...
Wow, February, okay.
I wonder why they decided to do this update. What do you think, Con?
I think it's just a response to this little shady article that came out on this little blog called Nikkei in Japanese. So I wonder if that's a Nikon response to that. But I also wonder that, we all should be patient, especially you, Z6 II and Z7 II owners, because it may take up to 10 years for the AF firmware to come out. It's a joke.
Hopefully not.
It's a joke. I'll take my coat. We love you guys. Hopefully it's going to happen sooner.
Yeah, exactly. Now, moving on from the firmware update, because it was a little bit of an odd one. We haven't had any other firmware update news, but we do have some interesting Z8 rumors circulating around, and a lot of drama has ensued because of that.
You know, there's such a thing called drama on the internet. It happens everywhere in all categories of things. And obviously when we start to talk Nikon, and especially Nikon rumors, then suddenly we have people saying it's my turf to decide what's the right rumor or not. So let's start with the first couple of rumors that were circulating around Twitter mostly. A couple of them came from How to Fly, and it's basically had two things based on. So the camera is going to be announced in August, so that would be Z8, and effectively Z8 is a Z9 with a shader grip and XP 7 processor. Now Nikon Rumors came out and basically slammed all this, saying, well, everyone can Photoshop a picture of Z8 by reducing the grip. We did it ourselves. I mean, let's be honest. So it's easy to do. And then saying there's nothing actually concrete happening in this space in the moment. So Bex, I would say let's discuss that. Obviously, we know that another camera is going to happen, and we talked in the past if it's going to be Z8 or Z6 II or Z6 Mark III or Z7 Mark III. So we discussed which is going to come first, etc., etc. But let's just talk about Z8 for a moment. So do you think Z8 is going to be a little Z9 brother, or do you think we're going to look at more high-res option, or again, talking about the shape of the camera, we're going to get the camera in a smaller shape than, let's say, D850, or we're going to get a slightly bigger camera than, let's say, Z7 Mark II?
I think if it is a Z8, if that's what they actually call it, then it will be slightly chunkier than a Z7 II and Z6 II. Whether or not it's a shaved off Z9 or a sort of reconfigured kind of Z9 with a similar grip and similar specs, I don't know. I mean, I know that you're definitely an advocate for the higher resolution sensor. Our commenters have been, viewers have been really divided on that. Some people have said, I don't want more resolution. Other people have said, I want more resolution. So I don't know what Nikon think is the best option for their users. That's really what it comes down to.
I think maybe Nikon should follow Sony in that respect and release the Sony A7, let's say 4, and then they say 7 4R version, which is higher resolution. So a 7F4, it would be something like Z9, let's say, and then R resolution would be something like, let's say, D3X or something like this. So maybe it's a good option like this. But then I personally think it should be different from Z9. It shouldn't have the same resolution sensor because it simply will cannibalize the sales of Z9. So now we can talk about absence of stock, etc., etc. That's not the point. The point is, if you have two cameras like D3 and D700 back in the day, it will eat your sales of your flagship. So it just doesn't make sense. So having a different sensor, hopefully larger, so maybe 60 megapixels, hopefully larger than 60, it just makes sense, because then you're aiming maybe at studio guys, at fashion photographers, advertising photographers, etc., etc. Now, while we can say that 24 megapixels is good enough for most folks, we absolutely agree, but we also need to think about professional photographers who will take resolution and will eat it with bread and butter. What I'm talking about is cropping facility, first of all. Second of all, our screens becoming more high density. So so effectively, even 4K, 8K screens are coming out now. Have you tried to zoom in a 24 megapixel camera on your MacBook, Becky?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of does okay up to a point. It's definitely not that I was talking about when we did the macro shoot and I was using the Z7 II and realized that actually having 45 megapixels is really, really nice. You know, if you are a pixel peeper and or you need to crop in for your photography, then definitely it makes a lot of sense to have more resolution. And I think if the Z8 is aimed at the sort of studio fine art photographers, a little bit like the D800s were when they first came out, then it does make a lot of sense to have a little bit more resolution. So I agree with you. I think if it's going to be a Z8, then it makes sense to have maybe a 60 megapixel sensor. If it's going to be a Z7 Mark III, then we probably won't see a new sensor. That's my thought.
That could be an option, absolutely. And then some people point out, they say, if I want a higher resolution sensor, I will shoot medium format. Well, good for you. Medium format is expensive for a lot of people, and we need to understand that. While cameras like GFX 50S2 and the GFX 100S are very, let's say, affordable to many people compared to offerings from Hasselblad or Phase 1, it's still fairly expensive. So again, those cameras can do quite well by being slow and providing higher resolution sensors. So now imagine a camera like this, but with a full frame sensor, still pushing the resolution limit quite highly, and then having a Z9 autofocus. Then for a lot of people, it will trump those cameras, because then it can be used for a lot more applications compared to medium format cameras, because it can be potentially used for wildlife and sports at a low frame rate. So that's a possibility. So in my opinion, I think we need to have a high resolution sensor. We need to have literally the same camera with shade or grip. It just doesn't make sense at all. What do you think, Becky, in terms of size? Do you think it needs to be bigger than the Z7 and Z6 cameras, or would you be happy to have a Z8 in the shape of Z6?
I personally like the ergonomics of the Z6 and Z7. I am thinking, though, it makes sense if it is going to be a new series, if it's going to be a Z8 and then launch a whole series of cameras based off that, makes sense for it to be maybe a little bit bulkier, a little bit more robust, but hopefully not too much heavier, because that slightly defeats the purpose.
Yes, I think, again, we need to start to think about the requirements of professionals. And, well, I know that we're all professionals and we're all keen enthusiasts at the same time. We all want our cameras to pack a punch, which is nice to have. But also, even from my personal use, I would prefer a camera size of D850, maybe a little bit smaller, but have this nice grip, being a little bit deeper, being a little bit taller compared to Z6 and Z7 cameras. Again, very personal choice, and I think a lot of photographers would agree with me as well as disagree. So in terms of this, I personally think let's have Z7, maybe with 45 megapixel sensor and a smaller shape, and then get Z8, slightly larger body and higher resolution sensor. Now, September, August announcement, do you think it makes sense?
I think September makes more sense. I did see that the general consensus was August for a release, but if we're going off sort of previous patterns of Nikon launches, then it would be more like September time, with a sort of announcement being end of September and then a product arriving October. Now let's see what happens. Not long to wait.
Yes, absolutely. I personally said before that I expect Z8 literally 1 year after Z9, and it made sense till the point that when Z9 came out, because we expected Z9 to come out in about October. So you got September, all the releases, all the PR stuff, etc., marketing. Then you got camera pre-Christmas. Now, the problem with that is obviously Z9 has been delayed, and it came out literally on Christmas, so effectively a couple of days before the end of the year. So I don't think it makes sense for Nikon to release again another camera on Christmas Day or on 1st of January 2023. So I don't know. I personally think, yes, I would expect camera to be announced August, September, with the release around October, November. Hopefully Nikon doesn't slip into December, January period. Otherwise, we're going to just move on to February, March next year. Makes sense. Obviously, summer is a quiet time. A lot of people pointed out that it's a good time for all the pros who testing the cameras to actually test the cameras, for people like Richie to write the extensive write-up and create the video, etc., for the camera. So it does make sense to have a release around autumn this year. So what is going to be though? Z8 or Z7 Mark III? Becky, what do you think?
You've already asked me that question like 3 times. What do I think? I'm going to go with the rumors. I'm going to say, let's see a Z8. Let's see what happens. I want a Z7 III, but I'm happy if it's a Z8 for sure.
Here you have it, folks. Becky said Z7 Mark III first a couple of weeks ago, and now she says Z8.
I did.
She can't decide.
I can't decide. Can't make up my mind.
All right, quite a polarizing topic. Do let us know what your thoughts are on the cameras. Obviously, it's a polarizing topic. A lot of people want different things from Z8, and it seems like Z8 is the camera that everyone is waiting for, even people who don't do photography at all. So do let us in the comment below your thoughts and opinions. Now, moving on. Normally, with the cameras that Nikon announced, they also announce some lenses. And this week, Thom Hogan published a list of the most sought after patents from Nikon that are floating around the internet. It's not full list, but the list of the lenses that he thinks are the most important. So, Becky, let's just go quickly through that and see what makes sense for us and what doesn't.
Yeah, so first up, he's got a 35 f1.2. Now, Thom seems to think that the 35 1.2 would almost certainly be the next prime after the 85 1.2 comes out. Obviously, Nikon haven't said it's an 85 1.2, but we are expecting a big professional 85mm. It's on the roadmap, so hopefully by the end of this financial year, before sort of March, April 2023.
So yeah, when I think 1.2, I think chunky. And speaking of chunky lenses, there's another patent floating around of a zoom lens with 1.2 apertures, which I think may not happen at all. But it's a 35 to 50 f 1.2, an interesting 19 element design with a lot of thick glass. So it seems like a very heavy, big lens. Personally, don't think it's going to happen, but it could be one of those knocked zooms, which means manual focus only, like 58mm 0.95, but who knows?
Now, they've also got the 70 to 200 f4, which is one we've been asking for a long time, as have our viewers. Now, Thom says it doesn't seem high on Nikon's priorities, but a budget telephoto option is still wanting in the Z-mount. And there is, I mean, we can clearly say that there's a definite demand for this lens. So he's hoping, which leads us on to the 70 to 300 f4.5 to 5.6, or as some refer to it as the 75 to 300, which I think I mentioned a couple of weeks back. Now, the patent apparently looks like it's a reformulated version of the F-mount AFP lens, and we've said several times that this is a lens that could easily be, you know, rebadged in a Nikon Z line with a Z-mount put on it, and should be fairly simple to produce, and it looks like Thom agrees.
Yes, absolutely. Even if it's a rebadged F-mount version, just get it out, please, Nikon. We need that lens desperately. We already more than half term in summer, so, you know, we definitely need this lens because, yes, we have 70-200, expensive. Yeah, we have 100 to 400, and that's very expensive as well, isn't it?
Exactly. Now, moving on, we actually have another mention of a sort of medium telephoto a little bit later, but next up we have an 85 to 135 with an interesting aperture of 1.8 to 2.8. Thom says portrait enthusiasts would probably be excited about. Not sure if it's a sellable option. There's more demand for primes like the 105 and 135 f1.8s, but it is interesting to see that Nikon's caught onto the faster zoom craze and is experimenting with options there. As with all patents, these are really experiments. None of them necessarily mean they're going to come into production, but it's more testing the waters to see if something is physically possible in a lot of cases.
That's true. 85 to 135 doesn't make sense to me as well because it's 2.8 throughout. We have 70-200 2.8. So unless it's really kind of half the size of 70-200 lens, then there's no point. Again, if you market it for portrait photographers, your bouquet should be outstanding. So again, it's a hard work to achieve, especially for the lens that you're probably not going to sell in multiples compared to 70-200 2.8. But now going to actual portrait lenses, we have 105 1.8 defocus control lens. What do you think, Beck? So 105 1.8 is obviously a nice portrait focal distance. Do you think defocus control makes sense? The last lenses that we had and that were recently discontinued is 105 and 135 f2DC lenses. They both have quite old design. So what do you think, Becky? Does it make sense to have the defocus control or in the new lens?
I mean, I'm no portrait photographer, but for me, the DC element is quite dated. I mean, for you as a sort of studio portrait photographer, would you ever use the defocus control function on a lens?
I have 135 f2. I never bothered to use DC. It's just too much. It's too gimmicky. And then again, you have to remember that you have to set defocus control ring on the exact aperture that you're shooting. So if you're shooting, let's say at f4, you need to set to defocus either at foreground or rear ground at f4 to get the result. And again, the results, in my opinion, are not exactly amazing. And then in terms of this, when you're shooting a live person, you know, the person who is live and moving, you know, then it's sometimes quite difficult to remember those things because you actually want to concentrate on composition, on lighting, an actual person that you're photographing. So in terms of this, defocus control, in my opinion, was not as usable for me personally, and I'm sure there are people who will let me in the comments below, obviously, that they love that feature, so who knows.
Yes. Now, one that's quite interesting to me is a 90 to 140 f4 to 5.6. Now, Thom and I think a few people had heard that Nikon were considering another macro zoom lens, particularly because the 70 to 180 was such a sought after lens after its production primarily. The only problem is that it's quite a narrow range for a macro lens, and to be honest, the 105 macro, the 105 2.8 MC is so superb. I think they'd have a tough time selling this one. If it had a slightly longer range, it might be a bit better, but it's interesting that that's in the mix.
Would you rather see 200mm prime over that zoom macro lens?
Yes, for sure. I think it would make more sense. Although it would be nice to have a zoom macro, if they were going to do something like that, it would make more sense for it to be something like a 90 to 200 or a 90 to 180 or 190 instead, which is not a focal length that Nikon generally have much practice in, so I think it's unlikely at this stage.
All right, speaking of long telephoto lenses, we actually have two patents for a long cheap zoom range. So we got 200 to 500 5.6 PF, and we also have 200 to 600 f5 to 6.3. So both lenses has long zooms. One of them is probably going to be cheaper than the other one, I would assume, the variable aperture one. But the interesting design of 200 to 500 5.6 PF, which is phase Fresnel element, I assume is going to be quite interesting. So probably a bit more expensive than 200 to 600. But again, I don't know, do we need to have two lenses in that range as well as 100 to 400, which takes the converter? I'm not quite sure. What do you think, Bax? And then also we have 300 to 600 patent as well. I wonder if those patents are created just different experiments, as we say, but then they'll choose one design to implement for the final product.
Yeah, I think that's actually possibly a sensible way to look at it, because they're all in very similar ranges, 200 to 500, 200 to 600, 300 to 600. And you're never going to sell all three of those lenses or bring those all to market. So I think it's possibly Nikon looking at different options, what ends up being the easiest to produce and also the most cost effective to produce, as well as what they can easily market and sell. So I don't think we'll see all three of those by any stretch. The 200 to 600's been on the roadmap for a while, but we have seen it where they've changed things on the roadmap. So maybe they'll decide that actually, you know, a 300 to 600 is more economical or something like that, and they'll do that option instead. We'll see. They've also got as their final long telephoto, which I think is also a bit far-fetched, but here we go. It's a 400 to 800 f8 PF, and that's the final PF zoom that's on this list of patents. Now, of all of the telephotos, Tom Hogan says that he thinks this one is the most desirable and the most likely version, which is interesting because we've already got an 800 PF prime, so it seems odd that they would do a zoom with the 800 in it. But do you think that having that additional flexibility and having a 400 to 800 range would be something Nikon would do?
Well, when I think PF, I think expensive. You know, it's still, I mean, reasonably priced, but we're not talking 200 to 600, let's say, or 200 to 500, 5.6 price. You see what I mean? So if 800 mil is at 6.3, then I would assume 400 to 800 would be around 3K or something like this. So again, if we start to think about this, it's a lot of money for a lot of people, but at the same time, if you do shoot long telephoto lenses, so your bread and butter is sports and wildlife, then you are prepared to pay those prices. So I would say, why not? it's not something that, let's say, needs to be produced urgently, like let's say 7300 consumer version, then but why not? Maybe let's release it this year, since it seems like a year of wildlife photography and long lenses. So yeah, why won't we just release another 5 long telephoto lenses? Then next year is going to be our year, Becky. So it's a prime lenses, it's macro lenses, it's affordable consumer lenses as well. Who knows? Let's pack all the expensive stuff this year.
Exactly. That's what we want.
Exactly. Let's go to extremes. We can't have one lens here, like a long telephoto and then a macro, a long telephoto and then a portrait. No, we can't do that. So we're just going to have lots of 24 to 70 zooms, lots of long telephoto lenses. So I'm just hoping for next year. Honestly, I've written all this year, part of Z8, clearly. But, you know, this year for me, we had, what, 8 lenses or so, you know, and yeah, it seems like they've all been telephotos, so you can cover that aspect. And I'm sure that a lot of sports and wildlife photographers, they really, really appreciate it. But for us who don't do that quite often, then yeah, we kind of feel left alone. So we are hoping for that next year, together with the Z6 Mark II firmware update.
Keep dreaming.
For the full list of patents, do go to Thom's Hogan's website and have a look at there. He also talks about the current lens roadmap and what we can expect from Nikon. So do check his website out. And let's move on to the news that Becky does not understand and doesn't want to really. And it's, to be honest with you, it's fair. So it's some corp news. So Nikon Corporation issued a couple of notices. So first one is notice regarding the completion of payment of disposal of Treasury stock as restricted stock remuneration. That's something to do with something they announced last month, so about compensation to the directors and restructuring of how the bonuses are being provided. So they finally completed that. So that's been done and out of the way, so not going to bother you with that. And then Nikon also continues to buy their own shares. Again, they've started back in May. They keep buying more shares. So just in July, they purchased 1,694,400 shares in total of 2,521,903,000 yen. And today that makes it almost 4.6 million shares at 7.1 billion yen. So it's a lot of stock buyback. Again, some people say it's a positive for the company. Some people say it's not that positive for the company. I think personally it's a good move from Nikon and it's definitely increased its value to the shareholders.
Okay. Are we done with that? Can we move on to third-party news?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
I set you free on this one.
Yay! Okay, so lots of Tokina news for you this week. Tokina are actually increasing their prices due to recent cost hikes of raw materials and components, as with everything in the world at the moment. So they have said that while they've been making every effort to absorb the cost hike, unfortunately they're not able to bear all the cost increase any further and need to revise the price of all their lenses. So that's one thing. On a separate note, they have discontinued 16 different lenses. They're also renewing some of their popular models, and the shipment of renewed models is scheduled to start from, already happened, but June this year. We won't read the full list of the Tokina lenses that have been discontinued, but if you're interested, we're going to include it for you in the podcast notes.
Absolutely. What I like they write about this, they say that renewed models will be marked with a plus sticker on the package and will come with Tokina branded microfiber cleaning cloth. That's impressive. Thank you very much. So obviously we are talking about extensive refresh, like including cleaning cloth and a new box.
Yeah, and then you have to pay extra for the cleaning cloth.
Clearly, and the price are going to go up. I mean, in terms of price increase, Becky, I think you can apply this explanation of recent cost hikes of raw materials and components. You can basically say on anything that I have to increase price, and then you just throw this generic comment, and then it's fine. Could be bread, could be anything.
Could be. Honestly, I've actually, on a completely separate, in my other life, in the writing industry, unfortunately, in publishing industry, the cost of paper has gone up. So books are becoming more expensive to print for publishing houses, which is an interesting by the by. But it's very, very true. There seems to be a kind of general increase of costs all over. Obviously, we saw Nikon's been and done already. Tokina now. Who knows who'll be next?
Okay. I think you can also say to your kids when they ask for pocket money, you can just literally say, while I've been making every effort to absorb the cost hike, unfortunately, I can't do it anymore. So there's no pocket money for you.
I will remember that next time they ask for something.
Exactly. It's like literally it's answer to anything right now.
It really is. And then we have TTArtisan news for you. So TTArtisan have a new 32 f2.8 full frame autofocus lens that we talked about a little while ago for the Nikon Z-mount. That is now finally available for pre-order, and here's some pictures of it for you.
Yeah, so price is $149 or £155 if you order from Amazon UK, so you don't have to go through all the customs. As I would say, we don't know how good it is, but you got autofocus for £150. That's good. I'm not sure about the optical quality. It's probably is not going to compete with something like 35-1.8 S lens or even Voigtlander lenses. But again, on a budget, it's always a good thing to have. Again, if you're just starting photography, you may start to look into those. At least you get autofocus functionality, and then maybe eventually upgrade to a better lens.
Exactly. Moving on, Viltrox announced a firmware update version 1.0.2 for their 13mm f1.4 STM lens for the Nikon Z-mount that fixes a screen flicker problem when recording video. So quite an important one if you're using that lens for video work. If you do own that Viltrox lens, we will include the link so that you can follow that through here.
Absolutely. That 13mm is the one that's been funded and kickstarted on Indiegogo a couple of months ago, and it's finally in production. It's good that Viltrox has continued to support their lenses by firmware updates. So I would say really good. It's nice to have the autofocus lenses as a budget option for Nikon cameras, and hopefully Nikon will follow this suit. All right, now let's talk about some third-party battery option for Z9. Everyone knows that Z9 takes ENL18D battery and also retrospectively the older versions as well. Now, we also have some third-party options like Power 200 battery, Wasabi, Caster, and Pro Master that are available and generally cheaper. My question, Becky, for you is, do you use third-party batteries, yes or no, and why?
I personally don't, although I do understand the appeal of it. If you are looking at buying one of the genuine batteries, it will set you back a few £100 in some cases, particularly for older cameras, actually, more so than the newer cameras. And also, at times they're harder to come by because of supply chain issues. But I personally don't use third-party batteries. I've never felt totally safe in using them. What about you? Do you use third-party batteries?
I feel the same, Becky. I don't use third-party batteries. Obviously, me and you were working in the shop for our viewers who don't know, so we deal with the customers, and we've seen a lot of horror stories of swollen batteries inside the chamber of the cameras, the ones that you actually can't remove. And we also saw exploded batteries inside the camera as well. And the problem with those things, if the battery explodes inside, and it fries some other bits inside the camera, it can make your camera a write-off, because repair shop will look into that and will say the damage has been done so extensively that we no longer be able to repair it anymore. So it becomes write-off, or it could be very expensive. So in terms of this, the problem is we don't really have a really good brands associated. Like, it's not like a Varta or something, that kind of, all Varta batteries are good or something like this, or Duracell batteries that produces for those cameras. It generally normally is, Chinese manufacturers. I mean, from all the things we see, I can see Pro Master and Wasabi, they have been around for quite some time. But because of the problems of the past, and I'm sure that the quality control has increased right now, and probably those batteries are a lot better than they were before, I still feel that it makes more sense to buy a genuine Nikon battery, or let's say if you use other brands, a genuine other brand battery, etc., just for the sake of it. I mean, let's talk about price of Z9. So price of Z9 is $5.5. So the battery price in the UK of ENL18D battery is £179. So in terms of this, having a spare battery, it's reasonable, especially if you start to consider the price of the camera, and the price of the battery is not a lot. If you start to look at other brands, aka Hasselblad or something like this, the prices are higher. Leica batteries are quite high as well. But also, if you compare it to Sony and Canon batteries, you'll see that the price for this type of batteries are quite high anyway. And then obviously, if you use something like Z6 or Z7 cameras, which take NL15 batteries, those batteries are a lot cheaper. So in terms of this, I would say, personally, I'd rather spend a little bit extra. And, don't skip on those little things. It's easy to cut corners, but then if you're a professional photographer especially, you want to make sure that everything works and everything is reliable. I have not seen any Nikon battery failed on me or the customer who are bringing those in. So in terms of this, I've seen more chargers failing than the batteries themselves.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, we'd be interested to hear your thoughts. If you're successfully using third-party batteries, then let us know. But in the meantime, we're going to just continue to advise you to stick to the genuine article if you can.
Absolutely. You see, in the week when there are no news, we have a lot of discussions.
Have a lot of opinions.
Exactly. Some of them are unpopular, but you love that. Okay, let's move on to some other news. So we have a bunch of accessories. So we got Easycover, who released the protection silicone covers for Nikon Z9 and also neoprene covers for Nikon Z100-400 lens. So my favorite one is bright yellow one. It just reminds me of this little scene from Breaking Bad, and I think I should get one personally.
Just for that. Yeah, the camouflage ones are kind of interesting. Obviously useful if you're a wildlife photographer and you're trying to be super stealthy. I can't really see any other reason for dressing your lens up in camouflage.
You know, my opinion about this, since we are full of opinions today, so I do feel like, okay, you can have the camouflage for the lens, you know, so obviously, yeah, if you are somewhere in place, you know, where you need to be hidden, etc., etc. I'm not quite convinced of putting a silicone cover on a piece of equipment that is very robust and should withstand a beating, you know, so, but I want to ask our viewers if what you think about it. Would you use a silicone cover on yours? Does it make you feel safer? Do let us in the comment below. Are you going to get one yourself, Becky? For Z9 you don't have.
Yes, I will get the bright yellow one for the Z9 I don't have. No, I will not be getting a neoprene cover. I will just continue to treat my cameras gently. And I'm sure that I'll be fine.
Yeah, I have an idea for our Halloween live stream and what we should wear.
Oh, okay. Yes. We need to get a couple of yellow jumpsuits, right?
That's right, you know, and just, you know, a couple of beers as well.
Yeah. Okay, good. Watch this space. It's like when I dressed up as like a pirate captain and people were like, what's that got to do with Halloween? You know, it doesn't really matter what you dress up as, I think, as long as you put in the effort.
That's true. I put some effort as well, and I dressed up as Ken Rockwell, but no one got it and thought, Con just doesn't care, you know, and I did. I
think a couple of people got it.
Exactly. You know, it took me 5 minutes to figure it out, but then I made it. You know, it's the attention that counts, I think.
It does, very much so. Now, should we move on to some reviews?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's have a look at the review by Camera Lab of Z400 4.5 lens. What do they say, Becky?
Okay, so they say Nikon's 400 4.5 VRS is a very good telephoto prime lens of an unrivaled low weight. The lens produces very sharp images with virtually no field curvature or color aberrations and can confidently be used wide open. Combined with the TT 1.4 converter, it still delivers good image quality, but using the 2x converter taxes the abilities of the lens a bit, which is pretty much the conclusion we've come to when using any teleconverters. Plus points are that it's very light, good resolution, good image quality with the TT 1.4, no field curvature. They like it very, very much.
What they didn't like, Becky, they didn't like minimum object distance of 2.4, a bit of focus breathing, tripod foot is not Arca Swiss compatible. Oh, wow, no one knew that. And then flimsy lens pouch. Exactly. So flimsy lens pouch we can disregard. Yes, you're not paying a lot for this. If they would come with its own case, it would be probably another £300 more. So I don't mind to pay less for having a flimsy pouch, and I would rather spend this money on a proper lens case or a backpack, whatever. You know, but tripod foot Arc Swiss, yeah, I agree. It's worth having. I know some people don't like it, some people do. I don't know what the right answer. I think last time we had about 60 to 40 split for Arca Swiss, but you know, I think 2.4 minimum focusing distance and focus breathing, those are the major ones.
Yes, exactly. Now, moving on to your weekend read and watch segment, we have the untold stories of Nikon Z9's development. This is a follow-on from what we were talking about last week when we had sort of like insider information about the development of the Z9. So now we have untold stories for you to have a look at and read. That's on Petapixel. And then next up, we have an interview with the Sigma Corporation CEO Kazuto Yamaki from July 2022. So a very recent interview with him. We actually had the great pleasure of meeting the CEO at the Amateur Photographers Award ceremony back in April, and he is a very, very lovely chap and was absolutely thrilled that Sigma picked up so many awards at that particular ceremony. So that's worth a watch on YouTube.
Absolutely. He still doesn't answer the question when Sigma for Z-mount, but he talks about 4V lenses, he talks about what Sigma is up to, so do have a look at it. He's a nice chap, and I'm sure a lot of us will appreciate to see an interview with CEO. Really, we don't really see this nowadays, you know. It's nice to have a company that is open. The only two companies that I know that do this is Sigma and also Blackmagic Design, where CEO is openly talks about the creation process of their cameras and other equipment. So the next one up, we also have Seth Miranda with tips on how to use reflector in daylight. So it's the video he did for Manfrotto with the reflector that they use, but have a look. There's a lot of tips and tricks on how to shoot in daylight by yourself, holding the reflector by yourself as well. So I'm sure a lot of you will pick up a lot of interesting techniques from that.
Yep, and then last up we have Nikon's long lenses, a rapidly evolving landscape by Camera Store TV. Now, Camera Store TV had a professional wildlife photographer, some of you will know, Brad Hill, who dived into Nikon's lineup of long lenses and gave advice on which lens is right for you. So have a look at that on the Camera Store TV YouTube channel. We'll include a link in the description box in the podcast notes.
Fantastic. The last announcement we're going to make before wrapping up is this Friday, we're going to have a homage to Nikon F with me, truly yours, Konstantin. Becky is away. Becky is enjoying the sunshine somewhere in the Caribbean. But I'm going to have a guest. His name is Gray Levitt, who is the owner of Gray's of Westminster, and who actually shot with those cameras. So actually, he can tell me what those cameras are like, because I've never used one. So I'm going to have a lot of questions. I'm going to ask how many megapixels it is, how many cards it's taking, and what they are, the compact flash or XQD. So do join us this Friday at 2:15 p.m. British summertime. And that's a wrap. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're on YouTube. Give us a follow, a rating, even a review maybe if you're listening on a podcast platform.
Yeah, we're available on Spotify, Amazon Music, and also Apple Podcast in high fidelity.
And if you'd like to find us on the internet, then you can look us up on Instagram, believe it or not. So I am at Rebecca_Danese. The shop is at Nikon at Grays, and Con is at Konstantin Kochkin.
Wow. For the third time, the charm, Becky. Do follow us on Instagram. We do publish lots of samples from the reviews that we make on the YouTube channel. So if you want to actually see the images that we've taken during the shoot, do head over there. And we will see you for another podcast next week. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye. The only bad points that they didn't like were that it has a minimum... Oh God, the bad points. The bad points were that it has a minimum focus object. Can you do that?